Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our 2024 read-along of Frank Herbert's masterpiece, Dune, his epic science fiction novel about a far future Imperium and a grassroots religious movement that bids fair to topple everything and change the whole map of the galaxy. And the figure at the heart of that movement, a young man named Paul Muad'Dib, that's him on the cover with, I don't know if you can make it out, blue on blue glowing eyes. This is a deluxe edition of Dune that was just printed fairly recently with these lovely end papers and everything. That I had my finger on the button on Amazon to buy this forever and ever, and then I thought, no, you have plenty of copies of Dune, and it's pretty, but you have plenty of copies of Dune. You don't need more. And then David Murphy and I were in Provincetown, of course. and he spotted a copy of this, so I was able to find a used copy of this. What I wouldn't give to have this set, only the copies of Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, which are every bit as lovely. But this is the story of a scion of a noble house in this far future Imperium, the House Atreides, which, thanks to Imperial machinations, has been shattered. And all of its retainers have been scattered to the wind, and its heir apparent, its duke, was killed. And its heir, Paul, and his mother, Jessica, an adept of the Bene Gesserit, have been thrown into the wilderness, and they have found a home among the Fremen, the wild people of the dunes of the planet Arrakis. And a large part of what allowed them to find a home there was not the quasi-religious reverence that they are coming to feel for Paul, but rather the social and religious manipulations of the Bene Gesserit themselves, who must have had a sister who came to Arrakis in early times and primed the Fremen with messianic prophecies about accepting an outworlder and his mother. The Fremen were primed to accept that pattern, and that allowed Paul and Jessica the foothold they need to show the Fremen how valuable they are. And that planet-seeding mythological core, the Missionaria Protectiva, is just one aspect, one of many aspects of the Bene Gesserit. They're basically a society of super nuns, and one of the abilities that makes them seem so strange and off-putting, formidable to the rest of the galaxy, is that in the ceremony that they undergo that a young woman undergoes in order to become a full adept of the Bene Gesserit, they take a refinement of the spice that is found only on the planet Dune, and it awakens their ancestral memories. So every Bene Gesserit sister has the memories, has access to the memories and experiences and sensory world of every other Bene Gesserit sister, going back 1,000 years. That is not how memory works. That is not how genes work. That is not how that works at all. There is no way that you could do that. But that is, in this world that Frank Herbert has created, your cells contain memories and sensations and even snatches of dialogue. And the Bene Gesserit sisters can access that for the female line going back forever. Once they undergo the change, once they change the spice essence inside their own body, if they succeed in doing that. Some of them die. And some of them can't do that. But if you can, that's what you get. And that, Jessica, actually, in the wild, goes through a process like that with the Fremen. They have a Reverend Mother of their own. A wild Reverend Mother, never been part of the sisterhood, never been to a chapter house or anything like that, but still doing the same thing. Obviously the product of the Missionaria Protectiva. And Jessica realizes this and becomes the Fremen's Reverend Mother by taking in the spice essence and changing it in her body. The only wrinkle is that she's pregnant when she does it. She's pregnant with her daughter Alia, the Duke's daughter, the dead Duke's daughter, Paul's sister, Alia, there's no way for Jessica to protect the fetus from that same awakening of cellular memory. So suddenly this fetus that isn't even a person, has never drawn a breath in the air, is being bombarded with thousands and thousands of memories of teenage women, of women in the passion of lovemaking with their husbands, in grief and death and pain and hardship, All those things that an adult can process because they have similar experiences of their own. But a little fetus is certainly going to be warped by that. The Bene Gesserit actually know this. They have a term that we're going to hear for that, abomination. That is not supposed to happen. But it does happen in this case, and as we know, we're moving on to the third part of this book, which is called The Prophet. And in between the second part of the book, which is called Muad'Dib, and the third part, a couple of years have passed. So Aliyah is not a fetus anymore. She's walking around. She's a little child, a little toddler. But she's not like any other toddler who's ever lived. She lisps. She still can't make her hard consonants, but she has the memories of not only an old woman, but 10,000 old women. And it makes her, in the chapter that we're reading today, it's a sedentary chapter. It's an off-focus chapter. The last chapter that we read ended with Paul Atreides stalking out onto the sands of Dune in order to summon a giant sandworm and ride it as an initiation ritual to become a full Fremen. And rather than give us a conclusion to that scene, Frank Herbert now breaks away from that to a stronghold in hiding, to Jessica in hiding, to Fremen women in hiding from the pogroms that have been initiated by the Harkonnen, largely at the behest of Thufir Hawat, the Duke's old mentat. A scheme of his has resulted in excessive pogroms that have caused the women and the children to flee into the deep desert. And I think that Herbert probably does this to up the tension for first-time readers. They're hanging on the edge of wondering what will happen to Paul with his first ride of a worm, and then they don't get it. They get this chapter instead, which mainly does two things. It shows us in great detail that Aliyah is not trusted by the Fremen. They think she's a freak. They're afraid of her. She's a little child who remembers things that only Reverend Mothers should be able to remember, and who doesn't have the discretion of an older person, so she blurts them out. And there's some rather touching dialogue. There's a woman who is, she was the bride of a man that Paul killed, so she is his property. And she takes care of Aliyah, and there's Jessica in the scene as well, and they're not all three of them on the same page about anything. And we get a little bit of that. This is essentially our introduction to Aliyah. And there's one other thing that happens in this chapter, which is that another Fremen woman brings word to Lady Jessica that the young men of the tribe know that Paul is undergoing his sandworm initiation ritual. They're certain that he's going to succeed. And their rumor is running around that when he succeeds, he should challenge Stilgar, the leader of the Fremen, should call him out and challenge him to single combat for leadership of the tribe. Stilgar has been the staff of sustenance for Jessica and Paul. They would not be alive without him. He saved them from the desert. But it's ancient Fremen custom that the strongest person, now that he's a full Fremen who can ride a worm on his own, should be in charge. And this alarms Jessica. Of course it does. She says several times in the end of this chapter that the tribe needs all the strength it can get, and losing Stilgar would make us weaker. But it looks like it's going to happen. But it doesn't happen in this chapter. It's just talked about in this chapter. So it is rather anticlimactic after the last chapter, and we're going to move on straight away to the next chapter where if we're a first-time reader, we're hoping we're going to get back to the open sands so we can see whether or not Paul rides a worm. Which is a delicate and dangerous matter of getting the worm to come up close to you, sidestepping it, and using hooks to open its side vents. Pry open one of its side vents. You're also using the hook to help you climb up onto this thing, which is as big as a building, under the understanding that the worm cannot submerge into the sand if its side gills essentially are open. It's got to be sealed for diving back under the sand. So as long as you can force one of those things open, you can keep the sandworm on the surface and maybe ride it. That's what the Fremen do. But Paul has to do this alone this first time to show that he can. And maybe we'll get back to that in the next chapter. So we'll move on from here. It's interesting and touching. It's long-term important. Not so long-term for this book. Aliyah plays a pivotal part. Lisping child Aliyah plays a pivotal part at the end of this book. But Alia is a major character when she grows up, obviously, and a majorly unstable character. If we continue our read-alongs of Dune, we will get to that. But in the meantime, that's this chapter. Then it's not numbered as a chapter or anything like that, but I'll designate it so that you can find it. So I'll wrap this up for now, and we'll move on next time. Thank you, BookTube.